Life with BPD is hard enough as it is, and so the question becomes, how do we cope with having such a difficult disorder? For those of you who are new here, my name is Kayla and I make videos about borderline personality disorder. And today I'm going to be sharing with you 9 tips about how to cope with BPD. The first tip I have about how to cope with BPD is one that's pretty obvious but is a fundamental pillar, and that's why it's the first one that I'm starting with, and this one is taking care of our physical health. Now I know that some of you may say, oh well Kayla, I already know this. If I take care of myself, I feel better mentally. Yes, we all know these things. However, how many of us actually go to bed early, don't play on our phones for an hour before sleep, go for walks regularly, eat a variety of whole foods? I know for a fact that I don't do it probably as much as I should. And so I'm sure that for those of you watching, you could probably relate to this. But as we know, physical and mental health are so highly correlated to one another. We all know that when we stay up all night binge watching crappy TV and eating candy and chips and popcorn, the next day we feel like complete crap. And usually it's not just physically, but we're foggy, we're irritable, we can be angry or have anxiety. So going to bed early, going for walks, moving your body every day, those are the fundamental pillars of how to cope with BPD and just mental health in general. The second coping mechanism is to practice mindfulness. Now, unfortunately for many of us who have BPD or just people in general, we tend to experience very high emotions, and when those emotions come up, it can be really difficult to pull ourselves out of them. So what I mean by this is that we get stuck on the emotion and then we ruminate and we think about it, and the more we think about it, the more judgment that comes up, and we think, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way, these emotions are out of control. And then the more that we judge and we ruminate, more intense emotions come up, and it just leads to this never-ending spiral of a bunch of mixed emotions that can be really, really difficult to come out of. And so mindfulness allows us to live with intention and awareness in the present moment. And mindfulness also allows us to live without judgment or attachment to the moment. So we are learning essentially how to detach yourself from these emotions and recognize that my emotions are valid, they're here, but they're not me. And we can let go of them so that we can come back to the present moment and the facts of what's actually happening. The beauty with mindfulness is that you can literally practice it anywhere and anytime. In order to be mindful, you don't have to sit on a cushion with your legs crossed and your eyes closed and do om sounds like a monk to be woke. You can literally do it at any time of the day. So what I mean by this, you could practice mindful movement, so doing yoga, tai chi, qigong. You can practice it by meditating formally. So if you want to be woke and a monk and sit on a cushion, then do that. Or you could simply describe and observe what you're seeing. So when you're eating something, describing the sensations. What does it taste like? What does it feel like? Observing around you when you're walking. What colors do you see? What do people look like? Is there any birds, plants? What's in the sky? So practicing mindfulness is great because, first of all, it's free. And anyone can do it, and it's accessible at any point in time. Luckily, there exists a bunch of free apps to practice meditation, which I'll just link in the show notes down below. But I want to make it very clear that mindfulness is all about being consistent. So imagine that you go to the gym once a week for 2 minutes versus someone who goes to the gym 5 or 6 days a week for half an hour to an hour. The person who goes more frequently is the person who's going to see more consistent results. And so with mindfulness, it's the same thing. The more you practice it, the more you're working this mindful muscle in your brain, and the more naturally it will come. The third coping strategy for BPD is using behavioral activation. Behavioral activation is a coping strategy that can have tremendous impacts on our mood. And so all we're doing is that we're linking behaviors and activities that are positively rewarding to teach us that our behaviors can have an impact on our mood. And so what you want to do is you want to make a list of activities you want to do and not that you think that you should do, and rank them from the easiest to the most difficult ones to do. And this could be anything from going for a walk to watching TV to dancing. And whenever you're feeling anxious or depressed, then you pick one of these activities that are positively rewarding, and typically they do impact your mood in a positive way. And so we learn over time that the more that we do these positive activities, our mood also goes up, and so we're implementing behavioral changes in our life. I'll link a really great free PDF workbook that I found in the show notes down below. And so this workbook really explains into detail what behavioral activation is, and it guides your whole thinking process from firstly defining your values so you can determine what's important to you, to then defining your list of activities. And so you can keep this handy whenever you're working with this specific coping strategy. The fourth coping strategy is to distract yourself. And I know that this may seem counterintuitive because you're quote unquote running away from your emotions and the problems at hand, but through therapy I learned that distracting yourself when you're in a state of high crisis can actually be the best thing to do for yourself and others around you. I like to think of emotions as sitting on a scale from 0 to 100, and this emotional tolerance scale can really help us determine when we should use the specific coping strategy. So let's say that your emotions are between 0 and 30. It's in between this little piece of the scale that you want to use those core mindfulness skills. So practicing mindfulness will help you to better assess the situation and have a more wholesome perspective on what's going on. When you move up the scale from 30 to 70, it's at this chunk that we want to be using the behavioral activation piece. So if we're feeling a bit agitated, a bit anxious or depressed, we can go for a walk or do things that have positive rewards to enhance our mood. And it's really when we get to this 70 to 100 range that we want to use those distracting coping strategies. When we are in full-blown crisis, we're not able to be mindful. We're not able to really think about anything else that's going on. And so we want to use distract skills such as using intense exercise, putting cold water on your face or ice. You can chew on a piece of ginger. And these are all things that will just change the biochemistry of your body to then bring you back to a more balanced level, quote unquote, so that you're not in this 911 crisis stage, and then you can actually implement the other coping strategies such as mindfulness or behavioral activation to better assess what's going on. The fifth coping strategy for BPD is to find support. It's really important to determine who is your support network. Who are those people that will always be there for you no matter what? And you can reach out to them when you're having a difficult day and just ask them for advice. Ask them, what would you do if you were in my position now? And just the fact of connecting with other people can really, really help to bring our distress levels down. And when I talked about my other video about what it's like to have BPD, which I'll just link up above here, I talked about how having these strong emotions can feel very alienating because it feels as though no one understands you. And so finding support in other people can help you feel connected and battle those feelings of aloneness. The sixth coping strategy for BPD is to learn your triggers. And so it's really about learning what the triggers are to your emotional dysregulation. And the more you know about this, the more you can remove what is avoidable and reduce what is not avoidable. And for me personally, one of my biggest triggers is being yelled at. And sometimes it's not even yelling, it's just having someone raise their voice at me and speak to me in a firm and assertive manner. It can spiral into a lot of feelings of fear inside of me. And so just being able to recognize that within myself and communicate it to those close to me has greatly reduced the amount of time that those things happen, because now they're aware. And so they change their way of communicating to me so that I'm not as triggered. This brings me to the next point, which is tracking your mood. So keeping a mood diary or using apps on your phone to track your mood can not only help you to better distinguish what your triggers are, but also to better understand yourself, your emotions, and your responses to environmental stimulus. Personally, I use an app called Dailyo, and Dailyo, you can either use it for free or you get full access by paying something like $8 a year. And so I use Dailyo on a regular basis to track my mood, my activities, my sleep. I also track the DBT skills that I'm learning from my program, so the mindfulness skills, the emotional regulation skills, and this has really helped me. I've been doing it for consistently for a year, but on and off for longer than a year. And I've really been able to notice that when, for example, like I'm on my period, my mood tends to go down, or when I have poor sleep, my mood tends to go down. certain activities that I do are linked to a higher mood. So for example, working out, meditating, spending time with friends. So it's allowed me to see what works for me, what doesn't work for me, and just to give me a more wholesome idea of where I should be investing more and less time in my life. The 8th coping strategy for dealing with BPD is to help yourself by helping others. And this method, at least for me, has always been one that has provided great healing value in my life. I'm sure we can all relate to this when you're helping someone else. So when your friend is sad and they're talking to you, you're fully invested into what they're saying. You're there, you love them, you have compassion, and you're not thinking about your other things. You also often come out of those conversations feeling as though you've contributed positively to the world. And so helping others, whether through volunteering or spending more times with friends and family, can really help you feel connected and make you feel as though you're contributing to the world. The last coping strategy is to be patient with yourself. Now, I know that this is easier said than done. Trust me, I know every time that it feels as though I'm veering off course, I get frustrated with myself and I lose patience with the progress that I've made. But ultimately, practicing acceptance and patience will help you to develop a non-judgmental stance of your progress and journey, which ultimately just makes everything easier for you in the long run. Another great coping strategy is therapy. I will preach therapy to my grave. I love it. I think it's wonderful. However, the reason why I did not mention it, it's for the simple reason that it is not free and not as accessible to everyone, whereas the coping strategies that I provided you with, they're all free. You can do them daily. You can do them without being an expert. You can find a bunch of resources online or in the show notes down below. And so I really wanted to provide an overview of things that are within everyone's grasp and reality, and so that you can start coping and better dealing with the BPD symptoms today. I'm always curious to know what works for other people, because obviously I'm still on this journey of healing and learning about myself. So leave a comment down below to let me know what coping strategies work best for you. And if you want to be a part of the On the Line community, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you get a notification every Monday when I post new videos about BPD. If you found this video useful, give it a like, and I will see you back here next week for another episode of On the Line.